You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts now.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters, we're going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders and something we talked a little bit about yesterday afternoon because the news emerged that another team has gotten involved with Antonio Pierce. Now, Antonio Pierce is, I think, going away at this point, probably the overwhelming fan favorite. By overwhelming, I'm talking 70-30. In fact, we'll look at a poll that was conducted by a site that covers the Raiders. And this is from yesterday, the poll is. Pretty overwhelmingly for Antonio Pierce. It's about 70-30, something like that. But the Tennessee Titans have gotten involved and want to interview him for head coach. Again, we're talking 9 games, a test run as a head coach. 5-4. Really, really great defense. Obviously, the players responded. Antonio Pierce, linebacker, played for the Redskins, played for the Giants, won a Super Bowl ring with the Giants, right? The Giants organization really likes Antonio Pierce. Yesterday, by the way, I just watched the Belichick press conference. I can honestly say, and most of the time when people say there was a mutual parting of the ways, it felt like bullshit. This did not feel that way between Kraft and Bill. It felt truly mutual, like this was truly the best idea for both parties. All right? And which you just don't get that sense a lot of times. So we talked about yesterday that there better be a hope that the New York Football Giants don't get involved with Antonio Pierce because, again, he was a linebackers coach, all right? Now, he became an interim head coach, but he got that promotion after Josh McDaniels got fired up from linebackers coach to interim head coach. Well, the issue you've got there, if you're a Raiders fan or a Raiders player, is that if Antonio Pierce looks like or starts feeling like he may not get a head coaching job, he may want to take a job as a defensive coordinator because it's going to be more money and it's going to be a promotion, and obviously it's going to be the next step up if he cannot get a head coaching job during this cycle. And the Giants, who just mutually parted ways with Wink Martindale, and in that case, the reason I brought up Belichick and Kraft is because I promise you, that was a one-sided parting of the ways probably. Wink Martindale officially can't stand him some Brian Daboll. All right? So that leaves the Giants looking for a new DC. And New York Post just connected the dots, and now you've got rumblings about Antonio Pierce and the Giants and their defensive coordinator job. And I tried to find the actual salary of Antonio Pierce, and I couldn't find even linebacker kind of salaries. I know a lot of DCs and OCs, generally speaking, are going to be somewhere. They're going to be over $1 million. They're usually going to be somewhere like $2 million, $3 million, something like that. So I would guess this would be a considerable raise. Now, obviously, if you get to be a head coach, it's a massive, massive, huge raise. Right? That's why a lot of these guys, these coordinators, will just take these head coaching jobs, even in bad situations with bad ownership, because, I mean, who the hell is going to turn down such a raise? Sometimes it can be as much as, 3 to 4 to 5 times what they was making. And they may never be a coach again, but, again, they get fired and they keep getting paid, right? Until they decide to go back to being a coordinator. New York Post, Brian Daboll was on the recruiting trail. And guys, this is where there's some other connection of dots here. In 2017, Brian Daboll was on the recruiting trail as Alabama's offensive coordinator. That's interesting, isn't it? Nick Saban just retired. Anyway. And he traveled to California to pay a visit to Long Beach Polytechnic High School. The quarterback there, Matt Corral, was a hot prospect, and Daboll met with the head coach at the school. That head coach was Antonio Pierce, the former Giants Super Bowl winning linebacker. Corral ended up going to Ole Miss. Quote, I got a lot of respect for AP, Daboll said on November 1st. I remember meeting him down in his office talking about Matt in Cali, and obviously know what he did here. I built a friendship with him along the way the last few years. Lo and behold, there is a scenario that could work out that brings Daboll and Pierce together and brings Pierce back to the team where he experienced his greatest NFL success. Brian Daboll needs a new defensive coordinator with Wednesday's official word that the team and Wink Martindale have mutually parted ways. Now, something to think about. Behind the scenes, it was a war, all right, between Daboll and Wink Martindale and Wink's boys, his fellow coaches, right? So there was some real tension there. Antonio Pierce and Brian Daboll are already real cool with each other. So immediately, you're bringing in a guy that obviously has a pretty strong defensive philosophy. We've seen his work come out after Josh McDaniels got let go. And Brian Daboll doesn't have to worry about whether he can get along with Antonio Pierce. Okay, so immediately, and we know how the players are going to respond. So you're connecting a lot of dots now. The Giants will be sure to check out Pierce's status. Pierce is looking for a bigger job as he is currently under consideration to become the Raiders' full-time head coach. 4 days after Daboll spoke about Pierce earlier this past season, the Raiders whipped the Giants 30-6 in Pierce's first game as interim head coach, replacing fired Josh McDaniels. Well, it should be noted, too, if he was to go to the Giants and Daboll gets off to an 0-5 start for whatever reason, or a 1-6 start, and the Giants decided to move on from Daboll, Antonio Pierce may get another chance to be a head coach. They let him have the interim job. The same response amongst Giants players is had that the Raiders players had for him. And Antonio Pierce played with the Giants. You can see a path for him to be the head coach in New York all of a sudden. The Raiders were 3-5 at the time of the firing and 19-16 overall under McDaniels. After Pierce took over, the Raiders went 5-4 and gained approval and endorsements among the players on the roster. Very interesting, right? Pierce, 45 years old, is an attractive option, and it will be difficult for the Raiders owner, Mark Davis, to pass him up unless he can land a bigger fish. One of those bigger fish mutually parted with the Patriots about 4 hours ago, such as Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh. Pierce could also be a candidate for other head coaching openings around the NFL if he does not remain in Las Vegas. Would not shock me one bit if the Seattle Seahawks call for an interview as head coach for Antonio Pierce, because we know how the players in Seattle responded to the players coach known as Pete Carroll, who's now a legend. And Antonio Pierce kind of has that same feel as head coach, right? That players coach, that kind of thing. And the Raiders players responding. Well, I mean, these NFL teams have noticed how these players have responded to Pierce with the Raiders. Mark Davis runs a chance of really messing this up, in theory. While there may be several candidates right now, most of the smoke revolves around Antonio Pierce, who finished the 2023 season as the Raiders' interim head coach after Josh McDaniels was fired. This is silverandblackpride.com. And Jim Harbaugh, who coached Michigan to the NCAA championship Monday night. So here is the poll that this website put up. There are also maybe other candidates as we start the process. John Gruden was thrown into this poll. I do like how you can see the actual votes and how they're split. Okay? 1,541 votes, that's plenty to get an idea of where the fan base is. All right? That's, I actually, believe it or not, I voted. I did. I'm going to tell you, you guys know I'm a huge Jim Harbaugh guy. I voted for Antonio Pierce here, actually. One of the four choices, who would you like to see become the Raiders coach? 978 votes, 63% for Antonio Pierce, 32% for Jim Harbaugh, 3% for John Gruden. And personally speaking, I don't know that you can go wrong with any of the three. And at some point, if the rumors are true, Bill Belichick's name is going to be amongst these. But Mark Davis better start sort of moving on all of this, right? Now, some of these coaches, if you want to interview guys that are in the playoffs, you can't do an in-person until after, I believe, let me just look at my calendar, the 22nd, until the 22nd, which is January 22nd. That's a Monday. That's when you can start interviewing in person if the coaches, coordinators, whatever, are actually in the playoffs right now. And again, I still think there's two potential openings involving playoff teams that we haven't seen yet. You know, well, maybe even three, okay, and two of them are in one game. If Nick Sirianni was to get beat by 40 by Baker Mayfield and the Fighting Bucks, there's been a lot of fire around his job, even though I think Howie Roseman and Lurie would be out of their minds. I like Nick Sirianni. Keep him on for another year. But Mike McCarthy's job, Jerry Jones, is not exactly given the most ringing of endorsements in the last week. And I think a lot of that's got to do with some of the available coaches that Jerry's looking out there and seeing, these big names, right? And it wouldn't shock me if Jerry is the big surprise here, right? And then Tampa Bay, all right? If Tampa Bay goes up there, and it is kind of amazing, Todd Bowles has made the playoffs 2 years in a row. Tampa Bay was forecasted to win about 2 to 4 games this year. Some people said Tampa Bay might be the worst team in the league. Well, they won 9 games in their division, all right? And turned Baker Mayfield back into what looks like a legit quarterback for at least another couple of years, whether it's with the Bucs or somebody else. But the Glazers also like big names. They went and got Bruce Arians. They went and got Tom Brady. There could be a coaching situation down in Tampa too, all right? So there's 3 teams, all 3 playing this weekend, and all 3, in theory, could end up having head coaching openings, which would be ridiculous. And also, I was talking to my wife about this earlier. I'm just going to throw this out. It's a wild card. It's a total shot in the dark. It's a total surprise. But is Nick Saban lurking on any of these NFL jobs, particularly if Tampa Bay comes open or if Atlanta is open? Think about that a second. These owners, Nick's the biggest name in the history of college football. Wow. What would the fan base do? Fan base probably wouldn't love it because of Nick's previous situations in the NFL, but at one time he was from the NFL. And he's a huge name, and he would draw a lot of attention in big business. And it's still a business. I'm just throwing that out there. All right, he may totally be done, but it's worth bringing up. Mark Davis, he better not wait too long. Because, if somebody could just swoop in, decide to do all their interviews really quick, and then Antonio Pierce could be plucked and out of there. Tell me what you think. Peace. I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.